Hello, everyone. You're watching Speak Your Mind with Dr. Ryger. I'm Nessa Alawi, founder and CEO of Join Mayshad, the New York-based company that empowers women on a daily basis. I'm here today with John Amsterdam, our VP of Development, and Dr. Risa Ryger, our clinical psychologist and investor in Join Mayshad. Miriam Sheribi is going to join us today. She's the president of the Mayshad chapter at Emory University, leading the youth initiative. Hi, Jan.
Neza. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being with us this week as we kick off yet another fabulous week of programming with the Mayshad Choice. We are an ecosystem of brands for women, connecting women to each other with the companies, causes, and institutions that champion equity for women professionally and personally. Please make sure to stay tuned with us each and every day with Dr. Risa Ryger and Neza and the team at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We also have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series, Tuesdays at 4, Workshop Wednesdays, and Mayshad Women in the City on Thursdays at 4 as well. Please make sure to share with us your thoughts and comments today as we progress through the show, and make sure to check us out at joinmayshad.com for all of our upcoming programming and learn how you too can become a member of this incredible opportunity for women to create the new future together. Thanks, Neza. Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you, Jan. Dr. Ryger, it's such a pleasure to have you with us every week. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to our guest speakers to be able to speak their mind with you and our audience with their questions. We are a week into June, entering the third week since George Floyd's death and close to 3 months into the global pandemic. We initially referred to the pandemic as the invisible enemy. Many of us felt very helpless. There wasn't much we could do about it, and other than stay inside and away from others. And then George Floyd was killed. Dr. Ryger, let's talk about the shift from invisible enemy to something that is very visible to all of us around the world.
Hi, Neza. Hi, Jan. Welcome, Miriam. And for all of the women who have tuned in today and are available now, and for you who are going to be watching this at your convenience, welcome as we start today with our hearts open and our minds open to what is going on, what we need to learn, and what's going on inside of ourselves. And so, Neza, starting with your question, it has been just an unprecedented time. I mean, we've talked about it being an unprecedented time of a tsunami of change. And when COVID-19 started happening, we thought that the tsunami was just going to be a medical tsunami. And that in and of itself was really enormous enough and overwhelming and requiring profound and difficult amounts of change, which still persists with us right now. However, little did we know that although racism and injustice has been with us not only throughout the pandemic, but really for decades, for centuries. I mean, it's been here with us. But what we couldn't possibly know is that what happened and what has happened and what has become so visible has impacted us profoundly. So we have a confluence. It's like these two rivers, are overlapping in a way that is also unprecedented in time in a different way, certainly in a different way from the Civil Rights March. And now there's a requirement to really live and really be with what racial justice, what equality really and truly is supposed to mean, and how it's supposed to be part of everyday life. And so I think that when there's so much that's happened that's been invisible, and we have seen I don't even have words, and I'm going to pause here for a moment, if you can bear with me, in that we're here together in this in this point in time to learn, to understand, to listen, to think, and to really reflect profoundly inside of ourselves, to stand with humanity and to do our parts in every way that we can. And as we go about doing that, and as we go about understanding maybe what we weren't aware of before, maybe things that we've been thinking, ways that we've been behaving, maybe even nothing that seems overt to us, that these conversations and this inquiry, this investigation is messy. And I hope that in the spirit and in the commitment of change, that we are iterating together, and we may not kind of resonate with all the right words, and that this is messy, and this is uncomfortable, and this is unpolished. And rather than saying, well, we should be polished, I'm saying we need to be unpolished. We need to be messy. We need to be able to stumble and fumble. And I couldn't be stumbling and fumbling with a better community than this community, because here we are together. And as we try, and as we commit, as we look inward and communicate outward, this is part of the learning process, part of becoming attuned, because even those of us who feel that we have, not, really perpetuated racism, we have done our best, we are absolutely committed, profoundly, deeply, it is still our imperative to really tune in and to become attuned to what we may not be attuned to become attuned to nuance, to become attuned to what we might think sounds completely okay, but isn't. And so in that process, there's going to be messiness, there's going to be stumbling and fumbling, and this is how we move forward, because we must continue to progress, and there is no progress without stumbling and fumbling. So this is where we are for the moment.
So Dr. Ryger, unpolished communication is better than no communication. And there are also stages that you're talking about, and we talk about the denial of feeling that we're responsible in this as people that have always been very open to other communities, to diversity. We tend to feel that we were not part of the crimes of history, and we haven't been discriminating anyone in our life. And then we had a speaker at a youth forum that Mayshad is leading last week, and that person told us something that really made sense. She said, when that young generation was asking, what can we do? And she said, look, you can just start by questioning your surrounding. If you're in your immediate surrounding, in school, at work, at home, everyone looks the same and feels the same and speaks the same, whether like in race or religions, and you feel that you have no diversity, even though you are completely open to diversity, then maybe there is something to question there, and start consciously working on creating that diversity in your immediate surrounding. So, Dr. Ryger, can you tell us about the unconscious bias that we're haunted by, and just to explain to people how we all have that?
Yes, there's a quote, I always look and see what moves me, what touches me. And there's something that I found, and I'm going to read to you. And then there's someone, a white person holding up a sign that says, "I don't have white privilege. My life has been really hard." And then there's a person of color holding a sign that says, "White privilege doesn't mean your life hasn't been hard. It means your life hasn't been made harder simply because of the color of your skin." And that's the spot for us to begin. That no one's saying, and I think this is important because it can be a point of confusion for people, that no one's saying that somebody else's life hasn't been hard. People have all kinds of hard lives. This is different. This is life being hard simply because of the color of your skin. That's step one. That's step one. So that in talking with people and having unconscious bias that you're not aware of, that's why it's unconscious, that the first step, it may be to get through whatever stereotypes you may have in your mind, to see the person who's in front of you, to understand what's happening inside of you. So the first thing to do is to become aware of what you're not aware of. Now that may sound like an impossibility. Like, how do you become aware of what you're not aware of, right? But it's not that hard. It just requires commitment, and it's active. It's an active process. It takes commitment, it takes effort, and it takes bringing an awareness. And by awareness, what I mean is this. For example, let's say you're walking into an elevator or you're someplace else and you're with someone, a Black American or a person of color. What could be just fleeting thoughts, fleeting images, fleeting stereotypes that go through your mind? And at that moment, that's a moment, it's not that, and we've talked about this, it's not that you've decided to have this thought. We can't control our thoughts. We can't control the thoughts that emerge. We can't control the feelings that emerge inside of us, but we can control what we do with them. And so as we're noticing the fleeting thoughts, so one is the fleeting thought. The other part is not only do we pay attention to our minds, but we absolutely must pay attention to our bodies. And we must pay attention to these micro moments where something in our physiology may change. And maybe we start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, or that there's something that happens even subtly, physically, when we're with someone of color, when we're with someone Black, that we notice this and we note it for ourselves. So when it comes up again, and it will absolutely come up again, it will absolutely come up again. This doesn't get eradicated. This doesn't change by noticing it once. This is not a one and done. This is an over and over and over. Noticing fleeting thoughts, noticing fleeting sensations in your body. And then the internal work is both like, why am I having this? What is this connected to inside of me? And when it comes into awareness, at that point, you can do something different. You can't change what you're not aware of. But the more you're aware of it, the easier it becomes to identify in yourself, to call it out, and make the change internally to start.
So, Dr. Ryger, change starts with getting out of that stage of denial and being conscious. And I think we also need to share with our audience the fact that we have been also manipulated to have those unconscious bias by content. There were so many contents created, movies, and after the age of slavery, segregation, that would put that African American in the role of the criminal. And so all that, it's, I mean, when we talk about also women's empowerment and how our generation grew up with Disney movies that put the women in a waiting list of the Prince Charming that is going to come back and wake her up. These are content that have been embedded in our personality as we're growing up. And as a clinical psychologist, you're explaining it so well. It's not because we are consciously open to diversity and that we are not unconsciously still the victims of generations of manipulation that have been telling us that you know the biggest criminals are more in the African American community than the white American community. So we need to be conscious and we need to get beyond. So today we have with us Miriam, who comes from that new generation that will implement that change for us. And Miriam is a student at Emory University in Atlanta. And Atlanta is a city that has one of the largest American, if not the largest American, African American community. Can you tell us, Miriam, and Dr. Ryger, going on from here, it's your show, so feel free to ask Miriam the question and vice versa, Miriam, all that curiosity that you have as a young future leader. Question, don't hesitate to ask the right question. But could you start by telling us, first of all, talk to us about your own experience in Atlanta at Emory University around diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, well, Emory University is a very diverse school. We have students coming from many different backgrounds, many different countries and cities across the US as well. So I never really looked at Emory as a non-inclusive space or non-diverse. And so when all these things are coming up in the media, it's very hard for me because at Emory, we are all together all the time in unison and supporting each other. So it's just difficult for me to comprehend that the rest of the world is, and the US is going through this. I mean, and it's unconscious, like it's bringing out ideas that people didn't really think about consciously. And it's just interesting to me that this is happening.
Well, when I was growing up, I mean, I was marching for all sorts of things, and this is different. This is a different level, and my experience with, not with de facto segregation, where things just kind of races just went in different directions, were channeled in different directions, and in your growing up, was there just more contact with diversity, with all kinds of people of different colors, people of different religions, and so that your experience growing up, and then seeing things happen to people who could be your neighbor, or like the kids you went to elementary school with, or the person that you sat across from at studying at Emory. I mean, could you speak to that a bit? Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say that I have had a very unique childhood. I moved to the US when I was 5 from Amsterdam. And then when I was 15, I moved to India for 6 months and went to an American school there. And I had the greatest experience there. It was very diverse. And then coming back to the US, I went to a private Catholic school, which was a completely different experience. And there were students who um, were more, I would say, consciously rude to minorities. And then there were minorities at my school as well who stood up for themselves. And I was just there taking part of it because taking part of standing up for minorities, of course. And then moving to Emory, it was more like I was back at the school in India, at the American school. It was a completely different feel. Students were very open-minded and, all inclusive. And then, yeah, I think that there are so many different communities in every city, especially in Atlanta, that like it is through housing and neighborhoods and schooling that sometimes you cannot interact with other minorities because of where they live and go to school. And that's happened through institutionalized racism and systematic racism.
So somehow, Dr. Ryger, these growing youth are also the victims of the system, because if they're not put in a diverse demographic, they don't know how be to to be prone to diversity, and so that takes us to those points, Miriam, of institutional racism, systemic racism, that all of us as a citizen, we're part of it, but we're manipulated into it without seeing it. And so these are the changes I think that need to happen today. And another point that is very important is technology. Technology has allowed today a story of George Floyd to be captured by a 17 years old girl. And if she hadn't captured it, yes, there would be a mother grieving the crime of her son. Yes, that mother could have been protested with her community, but the rest of the world wouldn't have seen the how criminal was the act. So, Miriam, now what is your question to Dr. Ryger? You have a very successful, talented clinical psychologist in front of you. What is your question about society? What can you ask a doctor to answer you on those things that you're not seeing change, and why?
Yeah. So my question is, with all the collective grief that we're experiencing from people dying of COVID, but also from police brutality, will my generation be able to overcome this grief? And I hope we can, and that we can believe that by working together and closely that we can overcome it. But it just seems like so far away from where we are now.
That's completely understandable, and my heart breaks for the fact that this is still continuing in such a profoundly brutal and unprovoked fashion, and that people are seeing it in front of their eyes, live, seeing it just in truth, and seeing what there is in front of your eyes. And then there are some people who are even attempting to deny what's there, the reality in front of your eyes. And it's just horrifying. It's horrifying. And there's an aspect of this where, we didn't take care of it enough. We did not take care of it enough. And so, and because if we had taken care of it enough, it wouldn't be where it is right now. And so I believe that your generation, that they're going to be able to get through this. I mean, but not necessarily in what we could imagine as what getting through it means. That inside of you is the understanding of what it is to be human. I mean, we're in these two pandemics, right? And that there's an interdependence that we have. And that's the truth of the matter. There's an interdependence. If I'm outside, I'm hoping that the person, that there's someone who's going to, stay within safe distance from me, that they're going to be wearing a mask, that they're not going to walk by and sneeze on me or whatever else it might be. But we're in an interdependent situation. We're in an interdependent world. And the more that we're able to be part of that interdependence, to be able to see people as bringing a difference and diversity into life, and that additively it makes us better. I think that what can happen is that both the sadness and the ferocity, the passion of fighting for justice, and that the fight for justice has hit a crescendo that is absolutely undeniable. And it has really hit in a huge way. And that my hope, my wish is that there'll be even more commitment to humanity, and that there will be more strength, even more resilience, and hopefully through this, both more optimism and not only feeling impact, but having made impact.
I think, Miriam, I think that there's also something that our generations can learn from your generation as well. And, for us at Mayshad, we have talked extensively with women who are at varying stages of grieving, acceptance, feeling inspired, hopeful, having a sense of wonder about what we're living through right now in this moment in time. And in many of those conversations, we talk about, and we're Gen Xers, baby boomers, we're a bit older, and see this through a very different lens, in the sense of also understanding that we do want to have change, but positioning that within the context of how much risk we feel comfortable with. And so in this moment in time, we often talk about how we want to use this time to really get uncomfortable with ourselves, to really think through, who do we want to be around? Who do we want to be when we come out on the other side of this? And what does that moment of change for us look like? And I think that, and Risa, maybe you could speak to this as well, just in the sense of, as we grow and as our brains develop, there's more change that happens to us, just in the sense of who we are, and then the behaviors that come from that, right? Talk us through, just in the sense of, what happens to us as we grow and develop, and our brains grow and develop, that changes us over time.
Well, without going too deep into the neuroscience, Jen, the time of adolescence, into mid-20s, is a time of profound change in the brain due to a number of different factors. There's the neurochemical factors, there's pruning that happens in the brain, the way we prune trees and we prune hedges. And so there is the courageousness, the passion and the courageousness of the teen years through mid-20s. I mean, there's the capacity of the brain to change throughout our lives. Change is possible throughout our lives, but this time of the teenage brain, meaning through early adulthood, is also a profound time of change. And so there's a passion and energy and, you know, the yin and the yang of the risk taking and the feeling that I can do it, and that can do attitude, that tossing aside of some of what's been in place and questioning, and, you know, as you know, people are really learning about and developing their identities, which is one of the most amazing journeys that can be had. Sometimes it's not so easy for parents, but it's the path that people need to go on as they develop into adulthood. It's like you got to find out who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you light up, what gives you joy, what makes you miserable. And so during this period of time, there's just this commitment, and we see it. We see it in the marches. We see it in this extraordinary determination. And there's determination of a moment, but there's determination that it's Monday, and the determination has to be there on Tuesday, and the determination has to be there on Thursday, and on the following Saturday, and on the Sunday after that. And that's some of the passion and energy of the people who we see out there. And I don't even know, you tell me, how do you want to be referred to? I mean, in terms of the stage of your life. I know you're a student, but you're an there's vocabulary like emerging adult. I mean, how do you want to be referred to? Help me figure this out.
I definitely use the term young adult a lot.
Young adult. Okay. Thank you. Let's get our terminology straight to begin with. But this time of young adulthood is just incredible. And you guys just have a whole lot of life sitting right in front of you right now that must be sorted through. And I believe, because I see it, I've lived it, and I know it, that young adults can take their passion and determination and use it for such good, and have the fortitude to stick with it. And we're right here. We learn, and this is a time for not young adults, for those who have gone past young adult, to learn and to open our minds and to take our experience, right? Because we've all had all kinds of experience, but to take our experience and say, hey, I may be really experienced, but that doesn't mean that there isn't great information, knowledge, passion, perspective that I must learn. It behooves me to learn. Why would I not learn? Unless I feel like I just have to stand ground like a tree, staying put. But we don't have to be trees just staying put. We can have movement, we can have growth, we can flower, and we can flourish. And this is an extraordinary, tragic, but extraordinary opportunity, because we also have to keep track of that it is also tragic. Right? We're not leaving that behind. But an opening of the minds, if nothing else, we need to be super clear that no matter how open-minded we may be, this is really a time to really open our minds. It's like having a walnut and it's a great walnut inside, but there must be growth. There must be continual growth. And one of the places that I want to learn, and I'm going to just go ahead and speak for Neza and Jan as well, and I can say that they want to learn also, is that we not only we want to learn, but we need to learn. We must learn. from our young adults and be in unity, not in age, not in what we've all lived through, but in unity of humanity and respect, that everybody has something to contribute, and we respect that.
Miriam, I think that this might be also a very different moment in time for your generation as well, and would love to get your thoughts on this, is that we know by the year 2050, the white Americans will no longer be in the majority. People of color will be in the majority in this country. And as we know that whites are now in the majority in 109 countries between the years 2000 and 2018. And so you have a very different perspective in the sense of understanding the interlocking nature of racism, classism, homophobia, all the different ways in which people are oppressed. And I'm sure that, you probably have talked about this with your classmates in your coursework and your research at Emory as well. Talk to us a bit about what does that mean to you in the sense of understanding that interlocking nature in a bit of a different way than what we may have been socialized into.
That's a tough question, but so for me, I think that by 2050, with what you're saying about how whites will no longer be the majority, I think that's a very interesting thing to think about, especially because there's so many worries that you could have about the future. Will there be reverse racism, or will there be a complete unity by then? And I'm not really sure what to think about 2050 right now, but all I know is that I want to continue with, working with others and helping others reach their full potential and see all the opportunities they have in front of them and make sure that everyone has equal opportunity. I think that's just so important, because one of the things that I learned from our session on Friday with the first episode of Be Who You Want to Be series is that I don't have the same experience as my peers who are of color or other minorities, and it's so important to listen to what they have to say, because I would have never realized that they went through those feelings of oh, I can't relate, were they saying something rude to me in grade school, and just it's very important how throughout our lives and our childhood, little things can affect us and be internalized, especially in terms of right now, the color of one's skin.
That's so well said, Miriam. And I think that it's so true, just in the sense of being able to have those honest, open conversations, and also understand that we all have different perspectives and different experiences, and be open to that awareness, which is incredibly important. I think we're all learning from that right now. Thank you for sharing that.
And Jan, I would also add, for Miriam's generation and even younger, if this time it can be just a time of awakening for the youth to question their surrounding. As when you talked about your life, Miriam, you talked about experience that were like very much diverse because your parents put you in those experiences, and others that were less of diversity. And so some people don't have the chance to have had parents that put them in any type of diversity. And actually they had parents who made sure by every one of their choices that they kept them in 100% white community with same religion, same everything, same social class, same, and so for those children who are your age at university, who are starting to be independent, for them to re-question, oh, that's weird. I've had a life where, well, I don't have that much diversity, and I'm realizing that everything around me looked not diverse, and so it's not normal. And for them to start making those choices and going to understand who are the others around there, because there are so many others, so many. That's what makes this country, when we look at it from outside, like a beautiful land of opportunity for all races, all, you know, multi-gender, multi-everything, because the population of it, when you look at it, when you look at cities like New York from outside, looks so diverse, but it is not the reality of the country all over. And so that re-questioning, realizing that the system has also put stages of racism that we were part of without realizing. Also, Dr. Ryger said something, all the greatest movement of history uh, like picked up for real when they got to the hands of youth, because youth has that power, energy in them, and they can commit to something because they don't have yet a very important career that they need to make sure that they don't fail in it. They don't have a family that they're responsible of, so they can allow themselves to commit to something strong and create societal change. And at our generations, we're here to create those spaces. We're here to influence, to use our influence to be able to push and give you the means and the support. And that's what we're doing here at Mayshad all the time, across, you know, all the content and the new forum that you're leading every Friday, Be Who You Want to Be, where Miriam, as the president of the Mayshad chapter, with Rachel, the VP, are leading a conversation, open conversation with other young adults, hosting guest speakers to speak about topics that matter to them. And so last week was about it was better life for all. Can you tell us about the next episodes that are coming?
Yeah, so this episode this Friday is giving back to vulnerable communities. And we'll have Nezha and another speaker, Matilda Aaron, who is in charge of the Ghana International Chamber of Commerce in Atlanta, speak about her events called the Children's Party in Ghana every year, providing eyeglasses and books to children who are orphaned, as well as constantly working to make a living for their family. So that's another interesting outlook that we'll be hearing on and discussing. And I think it'll bring some insight into the things that we talked about last week as well, which was a better future for all.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm remembering. I'm thinking back to a very difficult conversation over dinner that that my husband and I had with our friends who were African American. They live in the greater New York area, and that this was easily 10 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, easily. And what I found out I had never known was that this father told us that before, and this is a family that had two sons, that before their sons learned to drive, they had the conversation with their sons about when you, and they lived in, you know, in a lovely area with diversity and et cetera, et cetera. And that when you are stopped by the police, this is what you need to do. And there were very specific steps about where your hands need to be, not to reach for anything, to say sir, to say, they were very, very specific steps. And I thought to myself then, and now we're in a whole other space about that, but this goes to what young adults are inheriting, right? That this is not new. It's been going on. It's been going on. This has been part and parcel of what's happened and what's part of parenting. and when there were, difficulties with youth wearing hoods, that many Black families took their kids' hoodies and just, took, out of commission. And so these, parts of life that are not part of my life, are things that this is where education, this is where experience, this is where going into a department store and being a white person and being a Black person can vary. Step one, nobody knows your bank account. Nobody knows how many credit cards you've got in your bag and that you have whatever limited, unlimited funds in there. But walking into a department store, step one, that there are certain, assumptions or biases or concerns, and that there's a different experience, there's a different orientation that people can have. And so, so we have young adults passionately leading, and we're here and we must support for real, support, understand, learn, and act, and have impact along with you.
We have a question from the audience. Please, thank you again for being with us here today. I invite you to type in your questions to us in the chat bar, and we'll get to as many as possible. Number one question, how do we manage unity and overcome when things like natural disasters, diseases, etc., are seeming to become even more common and real? And what about unity as we head toward environmental change, as survival seems to be coming more to the forefront for all of us?
Miriam, you want to have a go at that?
That's a big question.
Miriam, you know what? I just want to fill you in, and I should have done it in advance.
Yes.
The questions that are asked, Neza and Jen always ask big questions. And our audience is amazing. And they also ask big questions. So, so here's another one for you.
Thank you. Well, just as we were discussing, I think it's working on what you can do within your community yourself, starting small, and then that will create an effect, a domino effect possibly, and reach out to others if everyone's, working to stay safe with COVID, wear masks, and then with environmental change, it's a little bit more difficult with environmental change because everyone's driving cars that run on gas, and I mean, recycling can only do so much. So I'll give the rest of the question up to you.
I'm gonna throw a much smaller question that I'd love for you to answer. How are young adults experiencing voting and feeling mobilized for voting? Because that's something that every one of us hopefully can do, on small scale, on big scale. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult thing right now, because people, seeing the current state of our country, possibly are just unmotivated to vote because they think no change can be brought with their votes because they might have voted in the past and nothing happened. But I personally think it's so important to vote whenever you can, even though now it's a bit harder with COVID. We have to sign ballots, and then the ballot could get lost in the mail. There are lots of things that could happen. So yeah, I personally, I know a lot of my friends are adamant about voting, but there are also students my age who choose not to because they don't think that anything will be changed.
Is there any way we can help? You don't have to answer right now. You can think about it and let us know.
Okay. I'll think about it. Possibly sharing your own experiences with voting, and how that might have changed or prompted your peers to become officials in government and make changes. Just sharing your own personal stories, I think, definitely will help.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Risa and Maria Manessa, let's maybe speak also, and I think this is also a part of the question that really is important for us to discuss, particularly right now too, is that we see that the pandemic, I mean, obviously affects everyone, right? Like many of us have friends, family members, colleagues, clients that have been tragically affected by it. We also know that more African Americans, and particularly African American, died than any other subset of the population. And there are a lot of different reasons for that, in the sense of access to healthcare, affordability of health insurance, all those different ways in which we see discrimination happening in our healthcare systems. And I think as we're experiencing more things like this, it also brings to light at such greater intensity the racial disparities in this country, for better or for worse. At least we're seeing them and discussing them in a way that they haven't been discussed and seen before. And so I'm wondering, as we're going through this moment in time, and no doubt there'll be something that comes next, using this time to also reflect upon what are our own experiences, which is a large part of this conversation, and understanding that our experience, Miriam, exactly to your point, isn't the experience of others as well. And being very empathetic and understanding, and using that critical lens of assessment to really understand how race, class, gender, ethnicity, nationality really do play out very differently in terms of who has access and who doesn't have access, right? And how can we in our own communities, right? It's, we've been talking a lot. I've read some really interesting articles lately talking about the change that comes within first. Before you try to change society, try to change yourself and try to have a positive impact in your own communities, and help yourself understand the ways in which you hold those unconscious biases and others around you do as well. And, wondering if that's, a possibility then for when the next pandemic comes, or when the next natural disaster comes, that we're all a part of those conversations of helping us to understand and provide different alternative solutions for how we address them.
Keeping, with your point, according to Johns Hopkins, 70% of deaths due to the coronavirus are accounted for by Blacks, but just who are 26% of the country's population. So African Americans, like in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, African Americans make up 70% of deaths due to coronavirus, but are just 26% of the county's population. And according to Hopkins, Johns Hopkins, this is not, specific to till the Milwaukee area. And so this is our time. I mean, I'm so thrilled you're here with us, Miriam, because this is our time, with upheaval, with the ground being turned over, that with disruption comes possibility. And this is our time to build our us best we can. We're here building us best we can right now, because going forward, we're going to need a whole lot more of us. For us, this is just the beginning. We need us. We need more of us. We need to be committed to us. And as people seeing people getting murdered, people being killed, that we don't look and see them, that we look and we see us as part of humanity, as part of people having compassion, and not saying it with platitudes, but really feeling it, knowing it, and having it in your heart, and then having it in some way, shape, or forms in your feet. Because the heart is great. It has to start with the heart, but then it has to move somewhere. And moving to your feet and moving to your hands to do is a crucial part of being part of the us. Now, it can be, to your point, Miriam, it could be on our street, in her apartment building, with a neighbor, with someone that we have an email connection with. We do not have limited opportunities. We have unlimited opportunities. We have as much opportunity as we can think of. And if we think we're running out of opportunities, contact your friend and they'll give you more opportunities. There's no excuse. And there's also no reason why you would want to have an excuse. If you're looking for an excuse, that's another place to go back in to say, well, I've done my part. It's another time to go back in and have another look. What does doing your part? What is having done enough when there's such phenomenal injustice happening right before our eyes in our hospitals, that there's so much in our hospitals who don't have the supplies that they need to be able to minister, to take care of the people who need to be taken care of. I mean, to be able to take care of the people who need to be taken care of, right? There's so much injustice. If you think you've done enough, look again. Look again. There is more to do. And there are people who will support you and help you figure out. If you don't know what to do, don't just sit there. Contact a friend. They'll help you sort it out with open arms. With open arms. This is a time not to be judgmental in that way. If there are people who don't know what to do and don't know where to start, we're here in Mayshad, and I'll say it again. This is the sisterhood, and the sisterhood means that there's a spot for you. You're welcome here. There's a seat at the table. There's always a seat at the table. And and then we just move over and make a space, that there's always space. There is no such thing as running out of room at the table. And so if you're not sure what to do, that's okay. That's totally cool. You got lots of people to ask who will help you and stand with you and sort it out with you without judgment. Don't be worried about being judged. We need to have a place that's safe. We need to be able to have a place that's safe to have these uncomfortable conversations. If we're not building trust in our own community, we're doing something wrong. Because to be safe, there has to be trust. Trust doesn't happen in a day. Trust is something that happens. Or we can start with trust. I mean, we can start with trust and go, well, why not? Why not start with trust? Why not start with a feeling of connection? And so this is a crucial part of who we are and how we want to live and how we want to show up for other people, to be helpful and to help move along together, to stand together.
Dr. Ryger, what a beautiful way to finish this episode. You said it so clearly. We cannot say that, oh, I cannot do anything. It's not about, it's about doing a small thing every day, every week, every month, rather than trying to do a big thing one time. And so at Mayshad, this is the space that we create. And Dr. Ryger, thank you for saying that, yes, there is space for everyone. And what happens when you connect to this type of environment, it's a reminder for you. You're not going to be, the first of the class on the first day. You're not going to be the most proactive person, networker, advocate, and so on. But you are committing to be an audience in that advocacy, and then one day you're going to have more than just watching something in it, and one day you will want to organize something in it, and one day you will bring an opportunity, or you will pull someone that would need to be part of this and would have that, someone who probably wants to be even more proactive than you, but you will tell them, oh, there is this cool space where, you know what, you can have a voice there, you can change things. And But you cannot do all that alone. You cannot go from not doing anything to doing everything, creating change on your own. And through the communities, and we see it, we've been part of several communities, our neighborhood, our religious community, our sisterhood community that made us, or industry community that made us proactive in a certain way. But what we believe at Mayshad, it's that diversity. It's like you have your industry community, but here you are in a space where we are individually working on our growth and collectively working on societal change. And at your generation, Miriam, where Miriam has been leading amazing youth initiatives with Mayshad, and she's running the summer incubator that we're doing with over 20 young future leaders from high school to college. And so this is where it's a cross-generational learning, mentorship, inspiration. And so when you're proactively committing to be part of an environment like that, it influences you, because if you're not here, you're going to be somewhere else. We're always influenced all the time by things. And this is the time to choose what is your influence, what is the influence that you want to have. So another beautiful episode, and today we also are launching the season of Speak Up, Speak Your Mind with Dr. Ryger, and yes, yes, It started with the weekly kickoff conversation that went so fast because it was during that time of COVID where week after week we're tackling the different feelings and questions, and Dr. Ryger was there to answer and support all of us through that transformation. So now we will be focusing on societal change and having different topics every week to create that change. And it was an honor to have a young leader today with us, Miriam. Dr. Ryger.
It's been just such a pleasure to meet you, to hear you. I thank you for sharing your thoughts. I thank you for your thoughtfulness, and I have a lot to think about from what you've said. And so I thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I've learned a lot from just discussing in our conversation.
Jen.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you again for starting your week with us. It means so much to us. And please, please, please make sure to visit us at joinmayshad.com, where you can learn all of our upcoming programming. And we would love, love, love to have you become a part of our ecosystem as well. We host incredible deep dive conversations with our subscribed members, and we invite you to take a look and join us on this journey together. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow at our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion show at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, Neza. Thanks, Miriam. Thanks, Risa.